Today, it's only half an hour or so by car or train from the landlocked aristocratic landscape that Rubens painted to the seascapes, rivers and canals of the Dutch Netherlands. Though not far apart physically, these two societies were as different at heart as the landscapes they inhabited. The Dutch escaped from feudalism by making new land. They built dikes against the sea in a vast communal effort that continues to this day. They made their own precarious land, and their peculiar geography made them. Vermeer's view of Delft shows us a secure town that has confidently mastered its difficult environment. The sea shaped Dutch society. But 80 bitter years of a cruel and bloody war for independence from their Spanish rulers created a Dutch nation. In the middle of the 17th century, the 7 northern provinces of the Netherlands emerged victorious from their struggle for independence and established the predominantly Protestant Dutch Republic. In a Europe dominated by absolutist and Catholic monarchies, Spain, France, Austria, the Republic was an island of relative freedom.
And the town hall of the Dutch city of Amsterdam, built in the 17th century, tells us something about the life and the ideals of the Dutch Republic. It has none of the qualities of absolutist architecture. Here, no grand colonnade leads the world into a central focus, as at St. Peter's, Rome. No succession of rooms and corridors and staircases takes us to the monarch's bedroom, as at Louis XIV's palace at Versailles. What you have here in Amsterdam are 7 simple, unpretentious doorways. The architecture of the new town hall, then, is an embodiment of the independent political aspirations of the Netherlands, an expression of Amsterdam's sense of itself as a free city at the center of the world.
In the 17th century, the Dutch city of Amsterdam was the greatest economic power in the world, a vast marketplace where every kind of goods could be had: pepper, whale oil, Japanese lacquer, cloth, wine. The Dutch became rich. They were the most urban society in Europe, literate, stable, well-fed, and decently housed. They knew themselves to be fortunate. They strongly identified with the chosen people of the Old Testament, with all that implied about the need for piety and obedience to God's will. In this peculiar new society, artists could not look to the traditional sources of patronage. There was no royal court, and the Dutch Protestant churches had been stripped of pictures, as we can see in this painting of the Mariakerk in Utrecht by Peter Sanredam. Nevertheless, the Netherlands experienced an explosion in the production and consumption of art. The first mass art market in history arose because, for the first time, ordinary people bought paintings, etchings, and drawings. Artists produced in large quantity for that market. The society was defining itself in the images it produced. The simplicity of these domestic scenes is often deceptive. This still life with trout by Willem Claeszoon Heda, while reassuring the Dutch of the plenty in their lives, also warns them of the remorseless passage of time. Jan Steen's comic painting, The World Upside Down, was intended to amuse, but it also cautions against the dangers of excess. Here, drink and sexual license cause a household to slide into complete domestic disorder. Jan Vermeer's Woman Weighing Pearls stands before a painting of the Last Judgment, warning that wealth must not distract us from our ultimate fate. The Dutch genre paintings are not just innocent images of everyday life, but of the problems and moral crises of everyday life. Like other works of the Baroque period, they convey a message.
Ja, naar links. Ja, dat is heel mooi. Verder naar links. Oké, iets naar voren. Oké. De heren achteraan.
Group portraits are still important today. In the 17th century Netherlands, they were essential, for power in the Dutch Republic was held not by a prince, but by corporate bodies, boards of governors, councils. And so the group portrait was, for the Dutch, the equivalent of the equestrian portrait in aristocratic and dynastic states.
Daar gaat hij.
In the hands of the most remarkable of the Dutch painters, the group portrait becomes an intense and purposeful expression of the group ethos. The Night Watch.
More has been written about Rembrandt than any other painter in the history of Western art. But if we had to think of one word that would sum up the essence of that art, it would probably be drama. All the elements of Rembrandt's art were put to the service of drama, none more so, perhaps, than light. His use of light was at the opposite extreme from Vermeer's. The Delft painter flooded his figures with an even, serene radiance, so that they sparkled with the intensity of an image caught by a lens. Rembrandt, on the other hand, turned the lights down low, plunging his histories into a theatrical darkness, the better to use his spotlight for dramatic emphasis and expressive brilliance. The painting was one of Rembrandt's most important assignments, but it was also perhaps one of the most difficult.
Militia pieces were hard work. In this picture by Nicholas Eliazer and Piquenoy, we can see that they were much like boardroom or team photographs, expressions of the collective spirit. On the other hand, each of the sitters was paying a tidy sum to have his own individual likeness rendered as faithfully and as flatteringly as possible. So, conventionally, they are lined up in front of us in a shallow, elongated space, marked out from each other just by variations in uniform or by gestures of painful artificiality.
Rembrandt brushed aside all these compromises. Instead of lining up his figures in a frieze-like format, he scooped out great hollows of recessed space at the back and front of the painting. And this sculpted space really gave Rembrandt the freedom that he needed to deploy his troops with animation. The drastically foreshortened hand of Captain Banning-Cock and the drastically foreshortened halberd, that weapon there, of Lieutenant Reitenberg, give the painting the quality of propulsion. So much movement forward that it almost threatens to trample the beholder with an irresistible onrush of energy. The painter seems to make virtue out of energetic disorder. It is, after all, how the Dutch often like to see themselves, full of dynamism and high spirits. At the same time, Rembrandt did his best to give the group a more soldierly appearance. The figures we see here, loading the musket, shooting it off dangerously close to the lieutenant's hat, blowing the powder away from the top of the gun, all correspond to the warlike values which this group of soldiers still like to believe they embodied. It's a group portrait and a history painting, something that testifies to the reassuring disorderliness of plain citizens. It's really chaos on an epic scale, something which immediately expresses not dumb discipline, but high animal spirits, a boisterous riot of energy, movement, and visual noise that explodes out from its center towards us. In every sense, to give it its correct title, The March Out of the Company of Franz Banning-Cock.